okay, John? How's my hair look?
Yeah.
Right, this next little video clip we will call Orchard Tools. Hopefully it will perhaps encourage you to use some tools you've never used before, and also hopefully save you some money. You won't waste your money like I've done over the years. Right, number one is vision. Don't buy your glasses from the 99p shop. Go to the pound shop and get proper jobs. Also, if you carry a hand lens, this one is times 10, folds up. They only cost about £8. Very, very handy for identifying your pests and diseases. On a more magnified nature, this costs about £30. It's a USB microscope. Shove that into your computer, look at your little creature or your leaf, for example, with this, and it will magnify up to 400 times, and it will come onto the screen of your computer. Fantastic, because you can see, for example, let's say apple rust mite, just as the infection starts. You don't have to wait until there's actual damage on the leaf. If you have a slight suspicion that you might have, let's say in my case earlier in the year, apple rust mite, look at it with your little microscope plugged in this computer, and you can see them. You can also click a button to photograph them for later reference, and click another button and you can email that picture to someone that might be more knowledgeable than yourself.
Did you say how much that cost, Ian?
About £30.
Right.
Let's talk about cutting things, which you have to do. Knives I use, these are Opinels. They're cheap French knives, handy for your bread and cheese when you go on holiday to France. They lock, so they're relatively safe. They take a very good edge. They're high carbon steel. They don't look very pretty. High carbon steel rusts, but that doesn't matter if you're using it for work. So I recommend use Opinel knives. They're about £8, because you will lose several throughout the year. For cutting with secateurs, I use, these are CK. They're a Pwllheli, North Wales firm. They cost about, this model would cost about £15, as opposed to Felco's, which would cost about £30–35. I find them more comfortable than a Felco to use in the hand, and at the end of the day, you end up leaving them on top of a wall, or you drop them in the grass. You will lose them. This is an old knackered pair I use for cutting wire. Blades easily resharpenable. For loppers, I recommend you just buy a good pair. These are steel ones, German. Buy some good ones. Don't buy cheapo ones from B&Q or Lidl's, especially those that they extend. Usually find especially with the cheap extending ones, you're twiddling them one way, twiddling them the other. If you get up inside the canopy of a tree to use them, you end up with a long stretch. You're better off with a good sharp cutting edge rather than relying on this leverage, because the more you have to lever, the more your arms have to open, and if you're up a wobbly old ladder in the canopy of a tree, it's quite difficult. So I recommend with your secateurs, buy good quality ones, because you tend not to lose those. For a small saw, a small hand saw, all tree surgeons use these. These are Silkies. They're Japanese. This is Japanese technology, super sharp, and they are pull saws. That means you pull them to cut the branch. if you inadvertently push them to cut the branch, the blade will catch and probably disintegrate. These will cost about 30 quid, but very fast, very quick. And obviously with a handy holster. You can see this is a silky. Mind your back there, John. And this is an extending one. Very handy for obviously for cutting high branches, but there's a tendency that they will bind in the wood, and if they bind and they snap, that new blade is about 40 odd quid. But they're lovely to use until they get stuck up the tree, and then you will get have a very nervous situation. For cutting small branches, I use one of these. What do you want, John?
Put it against the van so we can see it. That's it. That's it.
This is a solid small branch snapper, handy for me for gathering graftwood, for example. I find them much better than telescopic ones with bits of string, because when you've got the telescopicness and all the rope, there's just too much play and leeway. Much better to get. This is actually, you can see, it's an old one that I've reconditioned the wood with a piece of roofing batten.
So what would I call that if I search for it, Ian?
Don't know. One of those.
One of those?
Yeah. I don't know. Offhand. Where are we now?
There you go.
Let's talk about ladders. You've got to get up there. This is a triangular orchard ladder. Obviously made it myself, just out of tannalised roofing battens. It's a bit heavy, but because of the shape, you can push it up into the canopy, and if you hit it with your chainsaw like I've done up there, it doesn't wreck your chain, but you might fall out of the tree. This is what you don't want to use, and of course I would never have one. It's an old little thing I found at the dump, that when you climb up it, the legs sink into the ground and you fall over, but needs must at times. These ladders here are just a collection of roofing ladders, handy if you're putting some wires up in some fancy hotel or somewhere in your fancy garden. It's good to have several ladders in a row, then you can run your wires, you're not moving the ladders all the time. So I have several what you call ordinary builder's ladders. This monster is obviously an extremely high access ladder. If you want to climb up that with a chainsaw in your hand, you're a better man than me. I bought it off the internet, and you buy it by the number of steps, and typical of the internet, you don't really think things out properly, and this is just a monster. I never use it. It cost about 120 quid. It's just too big. It weighs a ton. It won't fit in my van. So if you're going to buy one of this sort of that, it's a good shape because it's very stabilised, but don't get a great big one. Save yourself some money. Finally, this is a proper, mind your back there, John. This is a proper aluminium orchard ladder with tripod for stability, really widespread, and it has adjustable legs, so if you're on a slope here like we are now, obviously, you just pull the pin out and it will drop and then lock in place, and then you've got a nice even ladder with big feet, and you can lean out at all kinds of dangerous angles. Ignore the little warning signs that it comes with. You can really lean out there. Where are we now? Fixing things. John, hold that. If we that ladder, by the way, would have cost about 120 quid. Very good value for money. If if you're fixing plants to canes, you can see if I was a little plant, and there's John's holding the cane there with this little gun, taper guns they're called. One little clip, one little click, and that plant there is now fixed to the cane. These will cost about 30 quid. The clips and the roll of tape's very cheap. So these are really good if you've got a lot of work to do. On the market now is one about 15 quid, which I presume is a Chinese copy, and I don't know whether they're worth it. But this is Japanese quality, really, really good. A tape and a gun. There you go, look at that. Done. This is a cleat gun. Much more heavy duty cable, heavy duty clips, and you might fix these to the top of a tree where it's blowing around. Very, very strong, and then you cut it like that. It's not as a well thought out design, shall we say, as the previous gun. I don't use this. These cost about 35 quid. I never seem to use it very much. If I want something strong at the top of a tree, I tend to just use the ordinary tape gun and do 2 or 3 on top of one another. Where are we, John? Fixing. This here, this is a potato sack tying up device. When you see a sack of spuds, you often will see one of these metal twists around the top. You just hook it on and pull it, and it will tighten that up. Very useful. I use them if I've got a series of wires and I'm making a fan, or let's say an oblique cord on. You can put that around the cane and the wire, and you can hold it at the right angle, hold it in place as you tighten it up. When you tighten it up, never pull it towards your face, because they can break catastrophically and you will get the end of this little machine in your eye.
And is that copper wire?
No, it's copper coloured. It's just metal wire. Normally they come with they're sort of blued or a bit greasy to stop them. It's just a coating to stop them rusting. But they last 6 or 7 years, I would say. So ideal for fixing canes to wires. Sometimes if you've got 2 canes too short, you can join 2 canes together, for example, to make a longer one. And because they will dig into the wood, they hold it very good. Also very handy when you're putting up your irrigation systems, rather than use Jubilee clips. These are cheaper, quicker and easier to use. When you're doing your wires into the wall, you can use drive-in vine eyes, bang them into the wall and put your wires through. That's what they used to use in the olden days. If you look at an old historic garden, you will see that. All you can buy now is these flat pressed steel ones, and they're useless. You try to bang that in anywhere and it immediately bends over. Much better to drill a hole and put a screw in vine eye. So drill a hole and screw it in. This here is a multi-purpose fencing tool. You've got a hammer, you've got a claw, you've got wire cutters. They are awful. Don't buy one, because there's no suspension in the handle, and they're really uncomfortable when you bang it in. Much better just to use a hammer. Finally, this is a telescopic picking device. Obviously it opens up and you hook your apples off the tree, your fruit off the tree. The problem with this design is that they tend to flip. Get that flip there, John? They tend to flip them over, and at the end the fruit ends up way behind you. What I use, I haven't got one with me at this orchard here, is a piece of soil pipe, 4-inch soil pipe, get it from the builders merchants, preferably unused obviously. Cut some serrations at the top, and then you can poke the apple, twist with the serrations, and it will come down inside the pipe. Put a bit of sponge at the end, it'll have a soft landing. With a grinder, make a little cutout, and so you can twist. The apple will come down, land in on the piece of sponge, and then you can get it out of the cutout and put it in your bag. That's it. Thanks, John.